On the evening of November 26, 1977, viewers in parts of southern England experienced one of the most extraordinary and unexplained events in television history. During a routine broadcast of Southern Television's news program, an unknown voice interrupted the transmission, claiming to represent the Ashtar Galactic Command and delivering a message telling mankind to give up its weapons in order to take part in a future awakening and achieve a higher state of evolution, all while posing as the Ashtar Galactic Command. Oddly enough, the mysterious voice that would go on to talk about peace interrupted a news story covering the fighting between the Zimbabwe African National Liberation Army and security forces in Zimbabwe. Viewers of the live stream said that a deep buzz replaced the audio, and then a distorted voice could be heard speaking for about 6 minutes. The person speaking made the claim to be Vrion, an Ashtar Galactic Command spokesman.
This is the voice of the representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command speaking to you. Many years you have seen us as lights in the skies. We speak to you now, you seriously as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth. To know the destiny of your race and your worlds, you make unique to your fellow beings the course you must take to avoid the disasters that your world and the beings on other worlds around you. This is in order that you may share in great awakening as the planet passes into a new age of Aquarius. The new age will be a time of great peace and evolution in the race, but only the rulers of the that can understand their dreams. We still know that your chance may not come again. All your weapons of evil must be removed. The time for conflict is now past, and the race of which you are a part may proceed to the higher stages of its evolution, if you show yourselves worthy to do this. You have but a short time to learn to live together in peace and goodwill. Small groups all over the planet are learning this, and exist to pass on the light of the dawning new age to you all. You are free to accept the executive teachings of those who learn to live.
Many go as wide as this, then they run out.
The concept of the Galactic Federation stands out as one of the most fascinating ideas in recent times. This alleged interstellar organization is often described as a coalition of advanced extraterrestrial civilizations working together to oversee and guide the development of less advanced species, including humanity. While the notion of the Galactic Federation is not universally accepted and lacks concrete evidence, it has captured the imaginations of many and has significant implications for our understanding of the universe and our place within it. As the former head of Israel's space security program, Haim Eshed shook the world when he revealed the existence of a Galactic Federation in December 2020. His claims, made in an interview with the Israeli newspaper Yediot Aharonot, sparked widespread interest and speculation about the possibility of extraterrestrial contact and advanced alien civilizations. However, in the aftermath of his revelation, Eshed's life took unexpected turns, with both praise and skepticism following him. Haim Eshed was the center of public and media attention in the immediate wake of his announcement. Journalists and other media outlets were clamoring for an interview with him, wanting to know more about his theories and what they meant for humanity. Eshed was thrown into the public eye, and both believers and skeptics scrutinized and deconstructed what he said. Eshed stuck to his beliefs, standing by his assertions and fending off criticism in spite of his sudden notoriety and attention. He restated that his knowledge originated from reliable sources in the Israeli military and administration, but he did not offer any particulars or proof to support his assertions. But after the initial excitement over Eshed's revelation subsided, he encountered further difficulties in both his personal and professional lives. His reliability was called into question by some in the scientific community who charged him with disseminating false information. Some expressed worries about how his statements would affect public opinion and the larger conversation concerning the search for extraterrestrial life. Apart from encountering doubt and censure from his colleagues, Eshed also faced opposition from the Israeli government and military institution. Although he first stated that he was authorized to share specifics of the Galactic Federation, later remarks from Israeli authorities seemed to indicate otherwise. Certain officials made an effort to disassociate themselves from Eshed's assertions, highlighting that his opinions did not constitute the official viewpoint of the Israeli government. Eshed found himself struggling with the aftermath and the ramifications it carried for his legacy and reputation as the uproar surrounding his disclosure grew. Despite his unwavering commitment to his convictions and his ongoing advocacy for increased openness and transparency regarding alien events, he had significant challenges in establishing widespread recognition and respect within the scientific community. Haim Eshed persisted in his efforts to learn the truth about the nature of humanity's place in the universe and the presence of extraterrestrial life, despite the difficulties and setbacks he encountered. The notion of the Galactic Federation is also deeply intertwined with channeling experiences. Channeling involves individuals claiming to receive messages from advanced beings, and according to individuals involved in this, it can be achieved a number of ways. In the 1950s and 1960s, numerous individuals, such as George Adamski and Daniel Fry, reported interactions with benevolent extraterrestrials who conveyed messages about peace, technology, and the existence of a galactic federation. These contactees described the Federation as a peaceful organization dedicated to fostering harmony and protecting developing civilizations from self-destruction. They often depicted their extraterrestrial contacts as humanoid beings with advanced technology and spiritual wisdom, emphasizing the need for humanity to evolve ethically and spiritually to join this cosmic alliance. According to proponents of the Galactic Federation, this organization serves several crucial roles in the cosmos, each aimed at maintaining balance and aiding in the evolution of sentient beings. The Federation is also believed to provide spiritual and technological guidance to developing civilizations. This guidance is often described as subtle and indirect, intended to foster growth without imposing control. Channelers report receiving advanced knowledge about energy, healing, and environmental sustainability, which they claim originates from the Federation. Felix Monla disappeared while chasing a UFO. On the evening of November 23, 1953, a routine Air Force mission over Lake Superior turned into one of the most enduring aviation mysteries of the 20th century. First Lieutenant Felix Monla, piloting a Scorpion jet, vanished along with his radar operator, Second Lieutenant Robert Wilson, while intercepting an unidentified flying object. The fact that Felix Monla is one of several active pilots who have lost their lives while pursuing a UFO does little to dispel the rumors that the tragedy occurred during a period when sightings of such objects were common. Employees in Michigan observed an odd radar return early on November 23, 1953, that appeared to be over the Lake Superior Sioux Locks region. Officials have noted that because it borders Canada, this area of Upper Michigan has very restricted airspace. First Lieutenant Felix Monla was racing to his Scorpion fighter jet on the Kinross Air Force Base runway to investigate shortly after the unusual object was detected. He wouldn't come back from this assignment. Second Lieutenant Robert Wilson would be flying the jet fighter's radar alongside Monla. However, Wilson's persistent inability to interpret the radar readings accurately meant that Monla would receive information from radar operators in the ground-based control tower throughout most of the trip. Monla would start to drop, and the object would abruptly alter trajectory as the aircraft approached at over 500 miles per hour. The jet would follow suit, chasing after the ball and bouncing off the control tower radar operator. This would go on for perhaps 30 minutes. Then, it seemed as though the aircraft was finally drawing near. Radar operators and other on-duty staff at Kinross Air Force Base observed the screen as the jet's representative blip approached the unknown blip in the control room. After that, they merged to become one. Viewers braced themselves for an engagement of some sort, or for the F-89 to fly right by the object and show up on the other side of the screen. Nevertheless, the object would disappear from the screen before any interaction could occur. There was an instant search of the region, and a radio communication attempt with the jet was made by radar operators. Still, nothing at all surfaced. The two pilots had disappeared. Based on the previously reported US Air Force documents, the object was last verified at an altitude of 8,000 feet, approximately 70 miles away from Keweenaw Point. All night and into the next day would be spent in search mode. The mysterious object that couldn't be identified was still unknown, but no trace of the plane or the two pilots could be found. It didn't take long for UFO investigators and organizations to become aware of the incident, given the peculiar circumstances surrounding it and the general perception of UFOs and flying saucers at the time. Naturally, the US Air Force didn't take long to backtrack and give different stories regarding what actually happened that evening on November 23, 1953. For instance, they would later assert that there was no such merger, despite initially claiming indirectly to the Associated Press that Monkla's jet and the object had combined on the radar screen. According to one account, the mysterious object was actually a Canadian Air Force fighter that had gone astray. It should be noted that the Royal Canadian Air Force would flatly disagree with this assertion made by their American counterparts. In the end, a statement from the US Air Force stated that the pilot probably suffered from vertigo and crashed into the lake. However, in actuality, nobody appeared to be aware of the two pilots' whereabouts. They also didn't seem to know exactly what the jet was pursuing in the form of the unidentified plane. This is a really intriguing claim. According to UFO researcher Gordon Heath, one would think that no Air Force, even the United States Air Force, would have an active pilot on duty who experienced such severe vertigo. Furthermore, it seems improbable that Monclar was able to conceal the illness from others while he was in the Air Force, as is the notion that his ailment was only known by hearsay to military investigators. If the reports of Monclar's deep-rooted southern accent being audible on the communications radio several hours after the Air Force declared him missing are true in the slightest, how was this information concealed from the other search team members? The fate of Felix Monla and Robert Wilson has interested many people over the years. The men's family members also want to know the true circumstances behind their loved one's passing. Official records only tell them that they are missing and that their plane crashed. For instance, Buddy Monclar, a cousin of Monclar, claims that he is highly receptive to the idea that Felix was taken by a UFO. Oddly enough, there's a witness, who hasn't been named, that claimed to have heard Monclar's voice long after he seemed to have vanished. Buddy believes that his cousin saw something regardless of what actually occurred, and the official radar recordings support this belief. Furthermore, as he put it in the early 2000s, what else could account for the peculiar and mysterious circumstances surrounding the occurrence and the equally perplexing response from the US Air Force? As researchers have pointed out, Buddy wonders if the mysterious unidentified object was an alien device or something that the United States was experimenting with. When a report on UFO sightings appeared on a website in the early 2000s, it revealed the identity of another apparent witness to the encounters. According to the anonymous witness statement, the victim was a former serviceman who was present in the Battle Creek Air Force Base radar room on the evening of the Kinross incident. Their version of the disputed evening was nearly exactly the same as what is currently in the public domain. However, he could fill in the gaps. 2 aircrafts had scrambled that night, according to his version of events, but one of them had to return very quickly to base because of a malfunction. Subsequently, Monclar declined to wait for a different wingman and instead intercepted the mysterious object while Wilson was monitoring the radar. The witness said that for the duration of the incident, both the radar screen and the radio communications were increasingly rife with chaotic static. There was only one jet in the air at the time of the scrambling, as demonstrated by the declassified and official documentation. In actuality, Felix Monclar and Robert Wilson, 2 troops, are merely one of several such disappearances, despite their terrible disappearance and alleged passings. To put it simply, acknowledging not just the existence of UFOs, but also their potential for threat would constitute such confessions. Not least due to the general lack of understanding we have of them. The Fishersville Incident. On December 21, 1964, at approximately 5 in the evening, Horace Burns was traveling from Staunton to Fishersville along Route 250 in the Shenandoah Valley when he suddenly started having issues with his vehicle. Burns was surprised to see a metallic object in the sky above him at about the same moment, and added that it was drawing nearer. His car's engine packed up and stopped responding as the mysterious object passed in front of him. Burns would later remark that although the car came to a stop, there seemed to be an irregularity in the speed at which the vehicle's motion stopped. He quickly exited the car and kept observing the object, describing its cone-shaped appearance as akin to an upside-down spinning top toy. He would also calculate that it measured roughly 125 feet in width and little under 100 feet in height. Burns could see a blue glow coming from the underside of the thing, but he was unable to see any windows or doors. He kept watching in disbelief as the item plummeted silently and landed in a field close by. It stood perfectly steady in its landing position for around 60 seconds, or even 90 seconds. Burns would subsequently swear to being able to feel a considerable heat emanating from it, even though it remained perfectly silent. It then made an abrupt, loud sound and shot skyward, eventually vanishing from view. Burns went back to his car after a short while to process what he had just seen. To his amazement, the automobile had not only moved itself into park, but it also started the motor without any issues at all. He drove home right away and had barely gotten through the front door when he started telling his wife what he had witnessed, even though he had already made up his mind to keep the rest of the experience to himself. But he chose to share his story with the organization after seeing a television program on a UFO club at Eastern Mennonite College in Harrisburg. He arranged this with Jim Shipp, the host of the show, who would first interview Burns for the show and then connect him with a college professor who was active in the group. Professor Ernest Gaiman from the organization showed up to look into the occurrence on the afternoon of December 30th, just over a week after it had occurred. Gaiman located the landing site and then used his Geiger counter to measure the radiation levels in the area. The fact that the readings were returning at 60,000 counts per minute more than concerned him. He would ask 2 more engineers to accompany him to the site so they could conduct independent testing to validate his conclusions. His findings would in fact be validated by these additional experiments. It took an additional 2 weeks for the project to send investigators, despite the request being made in the last days of December 1964. Sergeant David Moody, one of their best investigators, was the one they dispatched, and his presence at the sighting location would only be necessary in the event that there was a true threat to national security. In fact, one could wonder if Moody's protracted absence was the result of a thorough analysis of the exchange. In fact, a number of UFO reports from witnesses to bizarre sightings around the same time as Horace Burns were received between the time the report was submitted. Burns reported seeing a similar object in nearby Waynesboro the same night he saw the cone-shaped UFO, but one interesting encounter was reported by a 10-year-old. Reports from multiple local residents to the Virginia Electric and Power Company about an apparent weakened electricity supply to their homes that resulted in lights going dim, and even radios and televisions ceasing to work for several minutes a little after 5 in the evening may have provided support for the young child's sightings, as well as Burns. Kenneth Norton reported seeing a UFO in the shape of a beehive on the evening of November 20th in Staunton. Moreover, the Times-Dispatch of January 14, 1965, reported that Kenneth North Jr. saw a cigar-shaped object from his bedroom window in Staunton about 20 minutes prior to Burns's meeting. It's unclear whether the witness in these 2 sightings is the same, or even whether they have been mixed up over time. The November seeing is probably the real incident, which was then linked to the December date, leading to the creation of 2 distinct sightings when there was only one. Reports in the London Evening News and the Daily Telegraph, 2 British newspapers, would eventually reveal another sighting. The Patuxent Naval Air Station in adjacent Maryland reportedly recorded 2 unusual objects on radar that were traveling at a breakneck 4,800 miles per hour on the evening of December 29th. Additional information indicates that the 2 unusual objects approached the air station before abruptly altering their trajectory. Coral Lorenzen, a researcher and investigator, seemed to find it hard to accept that the air station's officials had informed her that the radar equipment was malfunctioning on the night in question when she looked into the accusations. More occurrences were reported in the days that followed. A Norfolk police officer was on duty. A few days later, on January 5th, at about 6 in the evening, Dempsey Bruton, another witness, saw something bright and orange. Furthermore, multiple additional witnesses were able to confirm the sighting. The following evening, there were 2 more reports. The first happened near Wallops Island, just after 6 in the evening. A NASA engineer, his wife, and his brother-in-law saw what they described as a round, bright yellow light shooting up from the ground in the distance. After a few seconds, it briefly hovered before vanishing into the distance. That same evening near Lynchburg, a local reported witnessing a round circle of light traveling southward at a relatively high altitude. However, the precise hour is unknown. After a few moments, the light abruptly stopped and then resumed its trajectory. Before it vanished, the item was seen for almost 5 minutes. An even more bizarre occurrence occurred on January 11th afternoon at about 4:20. 12 witnesses, 6 of them Army Signal Corps engineers, claimed to have seen at least 12 oval-shaped craft travel quickly across the sky. What's even more interesting is that the witnesses said these objects appeared to be being pursued by military jets, most likely from the nearby Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. Interestingly, the Department of Defense categorically denied that anything unusual occurred on the disputed night, despite the witnesses' steadfast adherence to their version of events, both in private and in public. 2 NASA public relations staff members, Mr. and Mrs. Milliner, reported seeing a bright yellow object traveling overhead the next day at roughly 6:30 on Wallops Island. The item was seen for about 2 minutes until it vanished. The Canterbury Encounter. The May 1972 UFO encounter in Canterbury, New Hampshire, is a fascinating event that would prove to have multiple witnesses, all of whom were deemed largely credible, from different locations of an anomalous object flying at extremely low altitude. James Lilly was walking with his 2 kids, Jimmy and Scott, and 2 of their friends, Peter and Tommy, at around 9:30 in the evening on May 13th near Canterbury, New Hampshire. They were heading to a chicken coop on their property where they intended to set up camp for the night. He was glad to let the boys spend the night in the unfinished and roofless coop. After making sure they were safe, he went back inside the house, but 10 minutes later, the 4 boys burst through the front door of the house, saying that something strange, a buzzing object, had hovered over the area, specifically over a chicken coop. They added that the item had a fiery exhaust and that it had illuminated the chicken coop below with light. The moment they heard the boys' strange story, James Lilly and his wife went outside to investigate. A mysterious thing that was slowly moving away over the marsh could be seen in the distance as they walked into the garden. Its sound, they would remember, was similar but not exactly like a jet. James instructed the youngsters to return to their camping after explaining that the object was only a helicopter, but the youngsters insisted that it was not a helicopter, no matter what they had witnessed. James Lilly instructed the 2 eldest boys to hastily draw what they had seen, making sure they were kept apart, since the 4 lads had refused to go back to their camping spot. To his astonishment, not only were the representations nearly exact replicas, but they also plainly displayed an object that had no resemblance to any helicopter or other aircraft he had ever seen. By now, James was starting to think that something really weird had fallen over the chicken coop, so he decided to give the Air Force tracking station a call. The next evening, May 14th, Fowler was informed of the occurrence by one of his contacts, who had received a report from his source at the satellite tracking station, a satellite tracking facility supported by the Air Force in nearby New Boston. He would show interest in the case right away and start digging deeper. It would take him a few days after the meeting to finally meet the witnesses, and when he asked the local police whether there had been any further reports of UFOs that night, which there hadn't been, he received a positive recommendation about James Lilly's integrity and general reliability. Additionally, he attested to the fact that, at the time of the incident, there didn't seem to be any records of any aircraft in the vicinity of the sighting. When Fowler happened to run into Lilly's supervisor, Arthur Stavros, during a meal break after arriving in town, Stavros provided more support for Lilly's trustworthiness, describing him as honest and hard-working, and not the type to create a hoax. Furthermore, just before the event at the Lilly residence, which was not far from his own, Stavros claimed to have observed an odd light hanging over the power lines. Taking it for a helicopter, he returned inside, but after learning about the Lilly family's experience, he started to question whether he had actually seen anything a little more unusual. In order to obtain a more complete picture of the boys' personalities, Fowler also conducted interviews with the boys' teachers during his inquiry. When Jimmy and Tommy returned to school, one of their teachers informed Fowler that the boys had told her about the sighting. After persistently questioning them about what they had witnessed, she left the conversation with the conviction that they were telling the truth. She would go on to say that they were both excellent students and that they had both performed exceptionally well on observe and report exams, which she occasionally gave her students. Put simply, they were reliable witnesses as well, able to precisely report what they had observed and highly unlikely to have made it all up. The local pastor, who heard the boys discussing their encounter after the Sunday service less than 24 hours after it had happened, gave a similar report on the youngsters. Like their teacher, he went over and talked to them about what they had seen, and he thought they were being truthful when they described what they had seen. Fowler travelled to the sighting site with the 4 boys after meeting the Lilly family. They remembered that they were getting ready for bed that night, with their sleeping bags laid out on the chicken coop floor. Scott was observing the stars while they were there, paying special attention to the star they had named the North Star, which Fowler subsequently discovered was actually the planet Venus because it was noticeably brighter than the others. Abruptly, he became aware of another object in the sky. He stated that there are 2 North Stars out there, and one is on fire and coming this way. The other boys looked up into the sky. A bright light was clearly visible to them, and it seemed to be moving towards the area in front of them. By now, the 4 of them had emerged from the chicken coop and were standing on the grass, observing the strange object as it approached. Now that it seemed to be coming directly for them, the boys thought it may be a helicopter. Jimmy activated the strong torch his father had given him by pointing it in the direction of the thing. To the surprise of all the youngsters, the object slowed down, yet kept moving closer as soon as he did. After a while, it would pass straight overhead the 4 lads, creating a grinding, buzzing sound in the process. They could all see it was not a helicopter as it zipped past them at around 150 feet, the lights from its underbelly lighting up the ground below. It was really nothing like anything they had ever seen. They would characterize the thing as having a decahedron form and describing it as tilting forward when a light illuminated the earth underneath it. They also remembered that its underbelly had 4 pipe-like legs, each of which had a round pad at the end. Flames seemed to pour down from the hot exhaust on the back of the object. They calculated that it had several silver cables covering and encircling it, and that it about matched the size of 2 automobiles parked end to end. The lads turned and fled as quickly as they could back to the house as the item moved past the chicken coop almost simultaneously. Fowler would also go door to door in the neighborhood and find numerous more witnesses who corroborated his findings. For instance, Marilyn, one of these residents, stated that at approximately 9 o'clock that evening, she heard a tremendous roar like a jet. She headed straight to the bathroom window and opened it to see what was making the noise. She said that the noise was a little strange and that it suddenly went silent, adding that it didn't gradually fade away as jet aircraft usually do, even though she was unable to see anything. About the same time as the occurrence happened that evening, Tommy's grandparents and Peter also heard unusual noises. Grandpa of the boys went outside right away to investigate what was generating such a commotion and saw something bright and glowing that was streaming light down towards the ground. In the nearby village of Boscawen, 2 unidentified women also reported seeing a strange horizontal set of little square white lights on the night in question, but it is unclear if these are related to the sighting over the Lilly home. A second witness, identified in the report as Alfred, stated that he had observed an odd glowing object between Lilly's residence and the power lines. He wasn't sure if he had witnessed this the same evening the Lilly family encountered the mysterious UFO. Regardless of the nature of the item, it is reasonable to conclude that on May 13, 1972, something was undoubtedly flying at a low height over Canterbury. Upon doing an investigation, Fowler discovered that at the exact moment of the sighting, there were no records of any scheduled planes in the vicinity. Additionally, there was nothing unusual about the radar records shop. Whatever the purpose, Fowler would eventually come to the conclusion that the boys and James Lilly, in turn, were given truthful and accurate descriptions of what happened that night, noting in his report that something strange was indeed observed. Records indicate that no conventional aircraft was in the area at the time of the sighting, and all the boys knew the shape and sound of the National Guard helicopters that flew over them on a regular basis, suggesting they were not misled and did not misidentify a small aircraft for a helicopter. The reported shape, sound, exhaust, padded legs, maneuvers, and very low altitude of the strange object would imply the grossest of misinterpretations, Fowler would write in a later post. Like many of the people who knew the witnesses, Fowler came to the conclusion that the occurrence could hardly have been a fabrication, not least because so many people saw the lilies and provided information to support the report, and in Fowler's opinion, the case was strengthened by more than just their witness testimony.